Hey folks, AJ the CEO here, and this is a video that I've been meaning to do for quite a while. There are tons of different type of cameras that you can use for your live stream, and you'll probably see them on YouTube and everywhere else. The best for your church live stream, 2022, 2021, 3032, whatever, something like that. But one thing I have not seen a lot are the pros and cons for the types of cameras that you can use. Now, I will say this from the very beginning, like we always talk about, use what you got, but I want to give a detailed breakdown as best as I possibly can of what I've discovered in using these different types of cameras and what are the pros and cons. That way, you know, before you pick one of these, that you'll know what you're stepping into. I don't want this to come off of saying that this is the best type, because I'm not there at your ministry. I just wanted to give you a breakdown of the details that you might not be aware of, so that way you don't regret the purchase that you're getting ready to make. So let's go. All right, let's start with the simplest thing, that type of camera that almost everybody starts off with, or everybody has, and that is a cell phone. Now, what are some of the pros of this? I mean, I just mentioned it. Almost everyone has a cell phone. They have access to it. You have great video or image quality. Almost all of these phones have some form of camera built into it that can be leveraged for live streaming. Whether you're using a device that just does everything and you don't need anything externally, and you just go with a phone or even a tablet. They have great battery life. Or you can always just plug it in, and then you don't have to worry about battery life at all. It's very portable, and I've seen people use them for different type of static shots. You can download different type of apps that support, whether it be NDI or even apps that I've done before, like Droid Cam or OBS camera for iPhone, that will turn your phone into a wired connection that can connect to a computer if you want to use it as a secondary type of camera. Now, there are some caveats. Some of the cons to this is, unless you want to stand there holding it, you need some form of tripod. Thankfully, the tripods are not very expensive. You can get some from a local convenience store and get some for as little as $5 all the way up to like $25 if you really need to spend something like that. Now, some of the other cons I would say with this, if you want to get a lot of dynamic flowing and different action shots with the cameras, you're pretty much going to need to have an operator on that camera, which, depending on how comfortable you are, that might be kind of difficult to have zooming in and out if you want to do a lot of motion in what you're doing. It doesn't give you, it's not very user friendly, I would say, overall. Some cameras are different. Everything I'm not saying is not just generalized, but overall, most of the cameras are not very user friendly if you need to do dramatic zoom out and slow control of these devices. Also, if you want to have it operated remotely, very few phones, if any, have options to where you can just set these up and they can be remotely controlled, whether you want to mount it on the wall or somewhere and be able to turn it on remotely, turn it off remotely, have functionality, pan, tilt, zoom, move in and out, and all this other stuff. Most of these do not have any type of option like that. Now, how would I use something like this? I would use the camera if you don't have any other option and you have your camera, your phone. That's the best way to start. I would use, personally, I would use a phone if I wanted to have static shots and I'm using NDI or something like that, or I'm in a mobile setup and, you know, budget might be an issue. Use and leverage what you got. You can hook these phones up to different apps that are like $5, like Droid Cam, the ones I mentioned before. You can connect it to OBS, vMix, and you can do some more detailed things. But again, I think using phones is a good start. Hopefully the pros and cons, make you raise your eyebrow and think about something like that. So let's go to the next one, which are DSLRs. Now, I've seen a lot of ministries use DSLRs, and I must admit, the image quality is outstanding. DSLRs were mainly used for photography, but a lot of them have had updates and people are using them for recording video. Now, I've used them personally myself. When I had a Nikon I can't even remember the model that I had. I was using that originally as well too, which is great. Gave me a great image quality, had that nice bokeh, that out of focus type of look, that kind of like you see what I have on my video right now. Gives you great quality. They have multiple purposes. Like I mentioned, they're not just going to be just used for video. You can take it off the tripod, use it for photography, for your media ministry, for different events, and it has multiple purposes. And like we said, it's portable, and you can come and go with it in any way, shape, or form. You also have different mic options, whether you want to hook up a mic to it directly, kind of like a Rode, something like this, Wireless Go, or a Lark 150, something like that. Gives you some control, or you can hook it up to a shotgun, and there are multiple options that you can do. Now, some of the cons to DSLRs that a lot of people don't talk about is the connectivity, meaning that they don't have, just like with the phone, you need some type of cable that can run back to what you're using to live stream. I know Canon came out with this utility to where it can turn it into a webcam over USB. My times of using that did not go very well. Some of these cameras have great image quality, but using that utility, it scaled down your image to a 720p. I think it might be at 1080p now. Last time I seen it, it was still at 720, and it just didn't give you the best out of that. But even if you didn't use that program, you need to make sure the camera supports clean HDMI out that doesn't have all the menus and stuff like that. Not all of DSLRs support that. The ones that do video normally do, but you still need to be able to connect it to a switcher, a computer, or something like that. And compared to the phone, you can't install an app that gives the feature to the phone. Everything needs to be external. Also, with these type of cameras, just like the other ones, they would need to be manually operated if you want to function. Yes, the zooming is a lot more fluid compared to the phone, but if you want to actually use that camera, someone's going to have to man it, or they're going to be running around going back and forth to give different shots. The other con to DSLRs are its battery life. If you don't have any form of external power, most of these have a limited amount of time on how long they can be used or how long they can record. Some of these cameras have a 30-minute limit. Some, like the Lumix G7, I believe, you can turn that off, and they have dummy batteries, that will allow it to record or stay on for longer periods of time. But again, these cameras were not initially meant for video. So sometimes they shut down because they've overheated on how they're using the sensor, their innards and stuff like that. And the last thing you need is to be in the middle of service and the whole thing just shuts down. Another con to the DSLR is its price. Yes, you can get a great image quality by changing the lenses, but again, a good DSLR, it's the body is one price, and then the lens is another price. So could you possibly work well with the stock lens it comes with? If it comes with, yeah, you could. But if you need to get something better, sometimes your lens will cost more than the camera itself. So that's really a con. So now that's just one camera, but then you got to think, now you start expanding, getting multiple ones. It's going to get kind of costly. DSLRs don't have any type of pan, tilt, and zoom functionality, but some of them do have a way for you to connect over Wi-Fi, and you can control the function of it. So you can zoom in and out and maybe turn it on and off. So if you find a way to have it powered externally through a dummy battery that turns into a power cable, maybe you could mount it on the wall. But all you'll be limited to is turning it on and zoom in and out, unless you link it to another item that gives it pan tilt control. And just like with the phone, unless you want to be holding it the entire time, you need to have it on a tripod. So those are the kind of the things that's going through DSLRs. Again, great image quality. I've used them myself. Me personally, would I use them in a church service? No. I would use a DSLR if I was doing like a baptism and had it for a short moment of using it. Using it for an entire service? No, I personally wouldn't do it because of the limitations of power, battery, recording, connectivity to the system. Since most of these cameras don't do live streaming natively like a phone would, and you need a lot of external things. All right. So let's go to the next thing, which are camcorders. All right. So camcorders are similar to just like DSLR, but the camcorders were made for long-term use. Almost the majority of them, almost all of them, have a clean HDMI out, so you don't see any of the menus and anything on that. You have long recording as well, too. They have long battery life, but they also have an external power supply that you can plug them into. Most of them have a good built-in mic, or some of them give you an option to connect another microphone to them. You have a lot more zoom built in, which can be a con if you want some more zoom and you're kind of limited to it. You can get very good image quality, not as good as a DSLR, but good enough that, I mean, the average person would not notice the difference. If we're in stuff like this all the time, yeah, we notice the difference, but not the average person won't notice it. So what are some cons to this? Now with camcorders, unfortunately, there are a ton of subpar options out there that I've had people show me, and they've used them, but they're subpar for a reason. They look great, they're cheap and affordable, but once you try to hook them up to some of a system, sometimes you can't control the zoom. Some of them don't have remote access, and that's another pro, I would say. Some of these camcorders have, just like with the DSLR, have options that where you can connect to them over Wi-Fi and control them, power them on, zoom in and out. But again, some of the higher end ones, there's a Panasonic camcorder that has live streaming built into it, but most of them don't have it. So you need external connections to connect to stuff, whether it be HDMI, SDI, anything like that. They also don't have any form of native pan, tilt, and zoom. So again, unless you have a static shot, you're going to need to get a tripod and have somebody manually operating it, unless you get like a rig that you can hook it up to do the pan, tilt, and zooming the same way with the DSLR. So almost the same thing as the DSLR, but it can go for long periods of time. Sometimes you can even get some weather resistant ones so you can take them outside and use. Now, I actually started using a camcorder. Actually, this is the exact one that I had started with, the Sony AX53. This has been a workhorse for a very long time for me, and works great. You can get it in 4K, 1080p. Honestly, 4K is probably about the same price as 1080p if you really need to. And you have multiple recording options as well. I think I already said that. But let's go to the next one, which are PTZs. So if you've been on my channel at any point in time, I've been installing a lot of PTZs. And what are the benefits of these? First off, they've come down significantly in price. Honestly, a good PTZ actually rivals a DSLR camera. You can get a good PTZ starting at $700. Yes, can you get a DSLR at $700? Yes, but it gives you some benefits. What are the benefits of PTZs? Most of the time you have one, if not multiple outputs, whether it be HDMI, which has a limited distance of how long the cable can run, or some of them have SDI that it can go up to 300 feet and have a broadcast quality connection to them. You also have, there are no battery options to it, which I guess you could say is a con, but they have external power, which could be through a power brick that's plugged into a wall or sending power over Ethernet if it's supported. So that limits how many wires need to go to it. Also, one of the pros is the PTZ, hence the name, pan, tilt, and zoom, allows you complete control over the camera, turning it on, turning it off, moving it left, right, up, down, zooming in and out. You have complete control over that, whether you want to hold a joystick up to it or connect it to a external joystick that you can use from a remote location. Another benefit of the PTZ is that you can mount them in any location you want to, as long as you can get a cable to it. Some of these have built-in functions to where you can live stream from the camera. Some cameras also, PTZs also have auto tracking, that it locks onto a subject and it can move automatically, not needing an operator. You can also set positions for it. So if you don't want to manually control it, you can just press a button and it will move to that complete position if you need to. And most of the PTZs can daisy chain, be connected to one another. So it makes it easy to control or add additional ones if you want to. They can be mounted in different places, walls, under a ceiling. They can be placed on a tripod if you want to. So you have a lot of options. Now, what are some cons to this? The PTZs. First, you can't change the lens because it's built in. Most of them do not have any type of mic built into them. You can add a mic to it, but most of them natively, it is for video only. Again, we mentioned it before, you need external controls. Yes, you can control it with the remote control that most of these come with, but if you're using this in a church standpoint, last thing you need is somebody leaning over, taking a remote, trying to get a RF signal to it to move it. Wouldn't be that user friendly. So you would need wiring as well as a joystick connected to it, which adds to the price of functionality. Also, there are no native recording options on most of these PTZs. So if you wanted to record, it has to be done externally. All right, let's go to our last subject because it can get really out of control after this. I want to try and narrow them down. And these are studio cameras. Now, these studio cameras, I would use the one that I'm using right now, or my Blackmagic 4K studio camera, are options that will give you the best of both worlds. Some of these can be mounted on an arm that can move back and forth. You have the option of, hey, I can get a different lens and I can get different image quality if I want, make it a zoom lens, put whatever lens that I want to on it. This one is made for long-term use. It has a battery, so it is portable, or it can be plugged in, because I'm using mine in some plugged-in form, as well as the studio camera. These cameras need to be manned, but the one that I'm using right now, the studio camera, I can remotely control it if need be. So you have a lot of options with that, but the one glaring issue with this is when you start looking at studio cameras, it is the price. They are very expensive, especially if you're trying to have a multi-camera solution. So, like the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K that I'm using right now was around $12.95, and that was the body only. That wasn't the rigging that goes around it. That wasn't the lens. That wasn't the hard drive that I hook up to it. That wasn't the cables, any of that stuff. There's a lot of other things that you can do with that. So, with these studio cameras, you can put them on a tripod. Some of these cameras, like the Pocket Cinema Camera, not the Pocket Cinema Camera, but the mini camera like I have, you can hook that up and have it remote controlled, because it was meant for like a drone. If you want to be really fancy, you could do something like that and give you a different, unique look, a high quality studio, almost like professional look, but just realize that you're going to pay for that price. So there's so many other cameras you could go with, but that's kind of the scope unless they come out with new ones. I know I didn't talk about 360 cameras. I haven't seen anybody use a 360 camera, but you're still going to be in one of those realms. So let me know down below, what type of camera do you use? Are there any other pros or cons that I didn't mention that you think might be of benefit to the community at large? Because I know a lot of people are looking for cameras, and my intention in this video, again, is not to tell you exactly what you should pick. Last thing I wanted a video of mine to come out and set the perception that this is the only type of camera you use that might be outside of people's budget. So when they hear the body of the camera is $2,000 and the lens is $10,000, we can't afford that. Because some people may think, man, if that's what it takes to live stream, we can't do it. I don't want to come off like that, but I want to show you that there are multiple options that you can use that can benefit your ministry in whichever way that you decide to go. So again, if you have anything that you want to add, pros, cons, to that, or let everybody know what type of system are you using. What type of cameras are you using for your ministry? Leave them down below. I have a couple of links to some of the ones that I use and I recommend myself. But hey, that's what we're about, to try and help you out and give you some no-nonsense, clear-cut direction to help you in your decision of what cameras that you're using for your ministry. So if you like this type of content, I appreciate a like, consider subscribing, hit that bell. That way you get notified when we come out with other videos to help modernize your media ministry. Thanks for watching, folks. This is AJ, and we will catch you on the next video. Later.